Happy Wednesday and welcome into 247 Sports Live. I'm Grace Remington, helping you get ready for a brand new season of college football. Before we begin this show, you know the drill. Please like this video and subscribe to the 247 Sports YouTube channel. Let's take a look at what's on tap today. We have a very special guest on hand, Joe Moorhead, the head coach of the Akron Zips, here to discuss the changing landscape of college football and how he's building the roster over there at Akron. We have our team site experts making the case for five-star offensive tackle David Sanders, ready to announce his commitment this Saturday, and the latest intel from fall camp as the days tick down to 2024 kickoff. And with that, let's bring in our national college football experts, Chris Hummer. Chris, we'll start in Texas, where Steve Sarkisian has said multiple times if he could pack two things for every game, it would be a defense and a run game. One of those things is now in question as C.J. Baxter and Christian Clark now out for the season. So that's two running backs. What do they do now?
Probably leave a little bit of room for the air in that suitcase because they're going to have to throw the ball quite a bit this year with Quinn Ewers. It is not a good place to be for Texas, to be at three scholarship running backs before the season even starts. The move to the SEC was already going to be arduous enough. It is a different style of play in that league. It is more physical. Texas is going to have to work through that league in a way they haven't in the Big 12 the last couple of years. But to do it with only three scholarship running backs is a really tall task. And Texas has national championship aspirations this year. And I think something people forget with the 12-team playoff and the expanded schedule is the eventual national champion will be playing 17 games. And to expect three scholarship running backs to make it through 17 games is a really tough task. Texas has already moved a linebacker, Darren Gillette, to running back to really bolster their numbers. But in reality, this is going to come down to three guys who are mostly unproven in their career. Jaden Blue, who was really good for Texas down the stretch last season, a bit of a home run threat. He said it's his money year, and now he has a chance to prove it. Trey Wisner, who was a sophomore, was the other running back in the class with C.J. Baxter last year. He was under the radar for Texas when he signed. He was kind of the other guy with Baxter. Now Texas is going to rely on him very heavily coming out of DeSoto High School. And then Jarrett Gibson, who was a top recruit in this class, is going to have a much bigger role than I think anybody anticipated. He should be ready. Was at IMG Academy, that powerhouse in Florida where they produce prospect after prospect. But there's just a lot of unproven names in this running back room for Texas right now, and it's really going to come down to Quinn Ewers being able to chuck it a lot to those receivers they took in the transfer portal.
Yeah, 200 combined offensive snaps for those three running backs you just mentioned. So if anything, they will have to overcome the inexperience on that part of the roster. Not the only running back injury we're looking at in the Lone Star State. Texas A&M dealing with the loss of Reuben Owens, the all-SEC freshman. So what kind of impact does his loss have on the Aggies?
This is a big deal, but not as big of a deal as the losses Texas is dealing with. And that's specifically because of the depth around Reuben Owens. I know Reuben Owens is the flashy big name, five-star recruit, certainly gets compensated quite a bit through NIL. Like, he was expected to have a breakout year, and he is a bit of a home run threat. But Texas A&M does bring back both Amari Daniels and Lavian Moss, who are their top two rushers from last year. Both of them were very effective, averaged better than 5 yards per carry, and Texas A&M's offensive line is expected to be much better. So there's help in the backfield for Texas A&M. A name people should probably know and they'll probably perk up in hearing in the state of Texas is E.J. Smith, transfer from Stanford. E.J. Smith is the son of Emmitt Smith, the legendary Dallas Cowboy Hall of Fame running back, NFL's all-time leading rusher. He'll get some run as well. So Texas A&M has pieces there. I think with Owens, what you lose is a bit of the home run pop. He is somebody who can make something out of nothing. And that's really important for an offense that really lacks established playmakers at wide receiver as well. So it is a blow for A&M, but it is much more digestible than what Texas is having to deal with, in my opinion.
Okay, so depth gets thinner, but we're not emergency level yet for the Aggies. Let's take a look at some quarterbacks during fall camp. Starting in the Mitten State, Aiden Charles was rated the number 8 overall player in this past transfer portal cycle. He follows his head coach, Jonathan Smith, from Oregon State to Michigan State. What are you hearing about him as he preps for his first season as a starter?
Well, I think our transfer rankings team is going to look pretty smart. They made a pretty bold call to make Aiden Charles their number 1 quarterback over guys like Cam Ward, Will Howard, Riley Leonard. And I had a source tell me the other day that got to see Aiden Charles throw that he was pretty incredible. He really popped for this scouting source, and that's kind of been the rep on Aiden Charles all offseason. He was great as a true freshman last year in limited action behind DJU at Oregon State. And the Oregon State staff there raved about him. It's basically the same staff in East Lansing, and they continue to rave about him. He's gonna start for Michigan State, and I think Michigan State has their best quarterback in at least a decade. I don't even really know who you'd go back to. Maybe somebody like Kirk Cousins or something like that to find the answer for Michigan State of their last quarterback of this level. I think Aiden Charles is legitimate NFL talent, and he is an amazing building block for Michigan State to have early in Jonathan Smith's tenure.
Okay, so no quarterback battle in East Lansing, but there could be one in Iowa City. And Chris, I know you were just so excited to talk about Iowa offense today. This quarterback battle really is interesting, though, because Cade McNamara came in, supposed to be the promised one. However, he's fighting back from back-to-back season-ending injuries. Brendan Sullivan comes in as insurance. However, he could have stayed the starter at Northwestern. Now it looks like he's challenging. How do you think this plays out, Chris?
Well, Grace, first, I say if you don't want to talk Iowa offensive football, you don't love college football.
True.
There have been very few subjects entertaining as Iowa offensive football the last couple of years. Iowa obviously brought in a new offensive coordinator in Tim Lester to potentially speed up the offense, maybe modernize it a bit, maybe some more spread principles in there. More than what they've done recently. But it really comes down to healthy quarterback play. I think that's part of the reason Iowa's offense struggled so much last year. Cade McNamara suffered a second season-ending injury early in the year, and really he had been dealing with something all off-season. So Iowa still hasn't seen a healthy Cade McNamara. He is healthier now, but it was a struggle in the scrimmage. I believe Cade McNamara had an incredible stat line of 8 for 24 for 20 yards with a pick six. And I just want to stress that he completed 8 passes for 20 yards in a scrimmage against his own defense. Oof. So that does open the door for somebody like Brendan Sullivan. Our guys at Hawkeye Insider, David Eichholt and Sean Bach, have done a great job covering this battle. And I tend to agree with them that Cade McNamara remains the favorite in this battle. I'd be surprised if he wasn't the starter. But Brendan Sullivan, somebody who has started football games, as you said, at Northwestern, who Iowa purposely went out and got to add not only experience in the room, but to add maybe an emergency contact of sorts for the quarterback position, given Cade McNamara's history. Sullivan is somebody who can step in and play for Iowa and has played before. So this is an interesting battle to watch over the next couple of weeks. I'd be surprised if it wasn't McNamara still, but competition, which is probably not what you want to see if you're an Iowa offensive fan.
I mean, 8 for 24 and a pick six against your own I physically winced when you said that. They might be just cursing.
They're the best performance. He's been more consistent in practice, as I've heard behind the scenes, but that is not the public display you want to show.
No. Okay, well, there are a few more fireworks expected down at LSU, where tight end Tryas Green, he's attempting to be a dual sport athlete. Typically you see fall and spring. He's trying fall and winter, football and basketball. So that'll be exciting to see. But apparently his athleticism living up to the hype in fall camp. What are you hearing about him?
Well, we spent so much of the offseason talking about all the receivers from the 2024 class, and justifiably so. But Tryas Green is somebody that's drawing headlines and eyeballs at LSU this offseason. You mentioned the two-sport thing. This is somebody who had multiple Division I basketball offers, high major offers to play. He obviously went the football route. He was our number 2 tight end in the 2024 class. He's already established himself as a spectacular catch machine in practice for LSU. He's consistently gone up and snatched the football away with his 6'7", 245-pound frame. I think the question mark for Tryas was his physicality coming off the basketball court. A lot of times you get those guys coming off. They don't want to block. They don't want to fight for the ball in the air in that way. But I think people in the LSU program have been very impressed by Tryas' ability to aggressively go up for the ball and to fight for it in the air and to show some physicality in addition to his ability to just win 50-50 balls because of his length. And he is somebody that's really flashed. I had somebody tell me he was the standout of fall camp early on for LSU. Mason Taylor is going to start for LSU, no question, one of the best tight ends in the country. But don't be surprised if Tryas Green pops up a couple times in the red zone for LSU, because he's a legitimate difference maker for them.
All right, we are 10 days away from the week 0 kickoff. Chris Hummer, what are you most looking forward to this season?
I'm just ready. I mean, I cover the transfer portals, like I'm sure a lot of people know that are following this, and I'm ready to see those guys on the field. But mostly, I'm just ready for my Saturdays to be like 10 a.m. to like 2 a.m. of college football again. It's the best, and please bring it on. But the 12-team playoff is going to be a lot of fun. I'm not a fan of the expanded playoff, but I am excited for the importance of games down the stretch. I think teams are going to be more in the mix than they have in a long time, and those late October, early November games are going to matter a ton, which I think is going to be very healthy for the sport.
Hey, you are so right. I miss those 10 a.m. start times, watching Pac-12 After Dark till 2 a.m. RIP the Pac-12, but it'll be a fun season up ahead. Chris Hummer, thanks so much. And for more articles from Chris, all his fantastic transfer portal coverage, for wall-to-wall team coverage on your favorite team, maybe your enemy team as well, check out 247sports.com. Our team site experts keeping you in the know with information, breaking news that you cannot find anywhere else. That's 247sports.com. All right, elite offensive tackle David Sanders set to make his college decision this Saturday. The five-star prospect standing tall at 6'6", 270 pounds, ranking as the number 3 overall recruit and top offensive tackle in the nation. His final 4 include Georgia, Nebraska, Ohio State, and Tennessee. Our team site experts for those respective schools, plus our national recruiting analyst Tom Loy, discuss where Sanders might land.
Georgia's been in the mix for David Sanders since the very beginning of his recruitment, and the push from Kirby Smart and Stacey Searles has really been consistent from start to finish on Georgia's end. I mean, as far back as last fall, David said that really Georgia and Tennessee were the 2 programs that were probably recruiting him the hardest at that point in time. He's taken game visits to Georgia. He's been to junior days. He's been to off-season practices. Really every turn that he could be at Georgia, he has been. You know, a couple of the main priority factors for him are playing for a championship contender, playing for a program that has put out NFL draft picks at offensive tackle, and Georgia definitely checks both of those boxes. Whether or not that will be enough for Georgia to win out in this recruitment still remains to be seen. But again, from start to finish, Georgia really has been able to check a lot of the boxes for the Sanders family.
Why could Nebraska potentially make sense for David Sanders? Of the 4 teams that Sanders is considering as he makes his decision later in August, Nebraska's made up the most ground out of any program. They hosted Sanders as kind of a surprise official visit in May, then got him back on campus in July. And I think part of the reason that Nebraska's really kind of inserted itself into the conversation, aside from the NIL piece of it, certainly, is just the way that they've recruited David Sanders and his family. I think Matt Rule's done a fantastic job of really selling that relationship, trying to make that relationship really work for Sanders and his family. It's kind of the geographical outlier, but Nebraska has really kind of gone from the dark horse in the competition to right in the mix. So I think Rule's relationship with the family is a big reason why Nebraska could certainly make a selling point there. Nebraska runs its program under Matt Rule more like an NFL program. They just cut the ribbons on a $165 million brand new state-of-the-art practice facility. So there's a lot kind of going in the right direction, or seeming to go in the right direction in Lincoln right now. Just in terms of playing time, Nebraska going into next season will have a 6th-year left tackle and a 6th-year right tackle no longer on its roster. So the depth chart opens considerably for a player of David Sanders' talent. And finally, just the relationship with Dylan Raiola. That's a big reason why Sanders took the visit back in May. He's really worked hard at peer recruiting. And you kind of make the case that you can kind of come and be another 5-star talent at a place like Nebraska and try to get that program back to where it was before.
Ohio State is the best fit for offensive lineman David Sanders for a number of reasons. First, think national championship. Sanders has a Final 4 of Ohio State, Tennessee, Nebraska, and Georgia. I really don't think he's going to end up at Georgia. So of those other 3, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Nebraska, there is absolutely no doubt that the school year in and year out that contends for a national championship is at Ohio State. And everybody wants to play for a national championship contender. Number 2, Ryan Day's prolific offense. He has had great offenses since the day he arrived at Ohio State, and now he has Chip Kelly as his offensive coordinator, which should make Ohio State's offense even better this coming season and in the coming seasons. Number 3 is development. Ohio State is well known for their development of talent and getting guys to the NFL, and certainly David Sanders wants to go to the NFL. So for development purposes, you're not going to beat Ohio State. And Justin Fry, as Ohio State's offensive line coach, a couple of years ago, he had as his 2 starting tackles Paris Johnson, who is a high first-round NFL draft choice, and DeJuan Jones, who is a 4th-round draft choice, but showed he was ready to play in the NFL his first season, became a starter for the Cleveland Browns and played very well. So Fry has developed great offensive linemen. And then finally, Ohio State has their 2 starting tackles this coming season as guys that will very likely be headed to the NFL after this season. So if David Sanders picks the Buckeyes, he has a great opportunity to start right away as a true freshman at Ohio State.
I think there are a handful of reasons Tennessee is the best fit for David Sanders. Let's start with proximity. Among David Sanders finalists, Tennessee is the closest to home, only about 4 hours from Charlotte driving, so it's been easy for him and his family to make the trip to Knoxville on a pretty regular basis. That's one of the reasons Tennessee has hosted him 5 times since early April, but I think they're a close family. The idea of staying pretty close to home makes Tennessee a comfortable fit, and they like the Knoxville area on top of that. Relationships, not just throughout the coaching staff, which he has good relationships with coaches at multiple staffs, but multiple members of Tennessee staff have developed deep relationships with Sanders and his family, and also their Tennessee commitments like George McIntyre, the 4-star quarterback from Brentwood Academy in the Nashville area, who have been close with David Sanders throughout the recruiting process, have made him feel comfortable with Tennessee. The opportunity on Tennessee's offensive line, the Vols, like a lot of teams, can at least talk about playing him early, but they have a real opportunity for him to step in and start right away with one of their starting tackles, John Campbell, being a 7th-year player who will be gone after this season. And on top of that, Tennessee's a place that has invested as much time, energy, and just resources into his recruitment. They've made him as much of a priority as anyone. I think he feels truly important to Tennessee and can see himself being one of the faces of not only this 2025 class, but Tennessee's program over the next few years.
You've heard the pitches for the 4 finalists. Now let's dive into what I'm hearing just a few days ahead of his commitment. Starting at the end, Georgia is a school that just doesn't have a ton of optimism right now. They don't feel great. I don't like their chances. I just think he's looking for somewhere else when it comes to making a final decision. Next up, you got Nebraska. Nebraska's been a surprising charger in this recruitment. They did a great job, led by Dylan Raiola, the freshman quarterback, who's done a phenomenal job of recruiting David Sanders Jr. Obviously, Matt Rule, there's a lot of buzz about the Nebraska program, so keep an eye on the Huskers. The team that I think is in second place right now is Ohio State. I think the Buckeyes are going to finish just short in the pursuit of Sanders. They did a phenomenal job. Ryan Day, Justin Fry, the entire staff made him priority number 1 and really opened his eyes when he got to Columbus. But in the end, there can only be one. I don't have a 247 Sports crystal ball, but if I had to put one in, it would be on the Tennessee Volunteers. He's been to Tennessee more than any other school this calendar year, and I feel like that staff, led by Josh Heupel, has done an outstanding job of making him a priority, showing him a lot of love, getting him connected with other commits in the class, and I just feel like when it comes down to making a final decision, I think Sanders is going to be a Volunteer.
Thanks to our team there for the fantastic insight, and you can be the first to know which school lands the coveted tackle. David Sanders' commitment will stream live on the 247 Sports YouTube channel this Saturday, 1:15 Eastern, so subscribe right now and set those notifications so you don't miss his announcement. Let's head to the Midwest now, where Joe Moorhead is ready to start his 3rd season at the helm with the Akron Zips. Moorhead brings a quarter-century of coaching experience into Northeast Ohio, including 8 years as a head coach. Moorhead has called plays for 5 programs that have won a conference championship, including Oregon in 2020, Penn State in 2016, Fordham in 2014, UConn in 2010, and Akron in 2005. He's also known for player development, having coached 23 players who have been picked in the last 6 NFL drafts. So with that, let's welcome in the man himself, Joe Moorhead, head coach of the Akron Zips. Coach, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to start with the X's and O's here. You might not get enough credit for it, but you're a godfather of the RPO offense. And even though that system has been pretty mainstream for 10 or so years now, it's a term that's often misused. So simplify it for us. What makes a good RPO play and offense?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people associate the RPO with the P part of it, which is the pass. But, really what you're looking to do is find a way to create numbers, angles, and grass in the run game. And you want to make sure that you are forcing defenders at the first or second level to make a decision between playing their run gap and playing their pass responsibility. And you have an opportunity to put people in conflict and hand the ball off when the numbers are good and throw the ball when they're not.
All about creating conflict for those defenders. Well, whether it's on the field or off the field, throughout your career, this sport has changed so much. What has been the biggest challenge for coaches that we and the public might not see?
Yeah, I think the hottest topic in college sports right now certainly is the transfer portal and the NIL and kind of the latest case that's going to allow schools to directly pay players. So heading into year 26 for me, I'd say the change has been quick and it's been seismic, and it's something that we're all trying to navigate.
Scholarship count is expected to increase from 85 to 105. How does that increase help your program?
Yeah, I'm not sure it'll have a direct effect on us, and we really haven't had those discussions with our administration until kind of some of the things become final and get put to paper and they turn into rules. So I think that's a path that we're going to cross a little bit further down the road.
Now, moving from Big Ten SEC schools to the MAC now, how do you instill the culture that you want among your players, knowing that you don't really have the same talent level as those Power 4 schools?
Yeah, I think one of the best things about the Mid-American Conference is parity. That on any given Saturday, well, I guess you could say Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, with Maction that teams have a chance to win. I believe they did a study that said 41% of the games over the past 5 years have been one score or less. But what you said about culture, we wanted to revolve around discipline, accountability, work ethic, attention to detail, and selflessness. I think that's the foundation of your program. But we've had 70 new players in our program over the last 2 years via the transfer portal and JUCOs and high school. So it gets difficult kind of to repeat that message on a yearly basis when it's kind of like an Etch-a-Sketch. You write your picture, and at the end of the year, you shake it, and you got to draw a brand new one. So it's something that's important. It's something we look to instill, but it's something very difficult to sustain when you don't have guys in your program for 4 or 5 years like you have in the past.
Well, you mentioned the transfer portal, so let's talk more about that. The G5 schools are constantly getting poached by Power 4 schools through the transfer portal. So how do you combat that?
I don't know that you can. We don't have any NIL, and if we did, it wouldn't be the type of money that would, prevent a player from leaving. I mean, we lost both of our starting safeties to Power 5 schools, and they were great opportunities for those young men. So I think that's a good role for the players and allowing them to make decisions that'll better their situation in their lives. And it's just something that we have to anticipate. We have to something for which we have to adapt and understand that if you have really good players and they have great productivity, that there's an opportunity that they're going to be able to move on to the next level.
Well, you mentioned your 2 safeties moving on to the next level. I'm sure you've recruited players out of high school who at that time in their careers were not being recruited by Power 5 schools, and now they are, now that they've been developed by you and your program. So what is your message to those guys? How do you get them to stay?
To stay, I think you sit down and you have an honest, candid conversation with the kids. And, I've never tried to talk a kid out of leaving. I just ask him to provide me with his reasoning. And if the reasoning is that he's going to get money that can help him or help his family, and that's really something that I support, and really there's no argument against it. But I always want to make sure that if they know where they're going, they shouldn't leave if their playing time is going to decrease or they're not going to have a defined role. A lot of the young men want to go on to the next level and play in the NFL. And the best way to do that is to play in games and have productivity. So I always ask them to make sure they do their diligent research and provide good reasons. And, at the end of the day, there's just certain things that you're not even going to be able to overcome.
Yeah, that's smart advice. Let's take a look at your schedule now. You opened the season August 31st against one of the favorites to win the national championship, Ohio State. Now, I'm sure you don't want your players looking at the point spread, but I'm sure they've seen it, and maybe they're using it as motivation. But what do you tell them? What is your message to the players when you go into a big juggernaut like that?
Yeah, you had to remind me. We've been concentrating on camp, and we won't get to Ohio State prep until next Wednesday. But yeah, I think Goliath was favored by less over David. So, I mean, it's a pretty significant point spread. I think 50.5 the last time I saw. But the one thing you can't do is lie to the kids or tell them, you have to paint a brutally honest picture, and that you're going to play one of the prohibitive favorites for the national championship, who's returning a ton of talent and experience on both sides of the ball. And they've got a fantastic head coach and 3 great coordinators. And, it's going to be, obviously, a tremendous challenge.
Well, hey, what if we wake up September 1st, newspaper headlines, Akron shocks the world, David does beat Goliath. What happened in that game?
Drinks on Coach Moorhead.
Let's go. All right, in prepping for a team like Ohio State, though, or maybe just any team that really utilizes the transfer portal, it's not so easy to go look at the tape from last year because it's a different look now. So how do you scout an opponent like this?
Well, I mean, starting on the offensive side of the ball, Coach Day and Coach Kelly are 2 of the best offensive minds and play callers in college football. So I'm sure there will be elements to both of their systems for which we've got to prepare. Obviously you've got Howard, you've got Sayin, you got Devin Brown, Henderson, Judkins, the Smith kid at receiver, a deep and talented offensive line. So, the kids who are new, you go back and look at some of their tape from, their previous institution, but relative to the scheme overall, you just got to be prepared to see them in a bit of a hybrid of Coach Day and Coach Kelly's offense.
So your first 4 weeks of the season, it's not just Ohio State. You're playing 3 Power 4 schools, also Rutgers and South Carolina. How do you measure your team's success during that 4-week stretch?
Yeah, I think that the Chiefs were already scheduled. We tried to get them on in place of Colgate, but they didn't work out. So that was, but yes, very daunting, very challenging. Three Power 4 schools in the first 4 weeks, and the message will be control. We can control. That's how well we prepare, our level of effort, and do we execute? One play at a time for 4 quarters, and to look that far ahead and say, this is what we need to do in each of these 3 games for it to be considered a success. We're not there yet, but we certainly understand the challenge of playing, like I said, Ohio State, South Carolina, who was 5-7 last year and is a incredibly talented and well-coached SEC team. And, Rutgers, where Coach Schiano has once again resurrected them and, had the opportunity to win a bowl game over a great Miami team. I mean, it's going to be an incredible challenge.
All right, that's head coach Joe Moorhead of the Akron Zips. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm sure it's the busiest time of the year for you, but thank you and wish you the best in this upcoming season.
Yep, I'm drinking out of my grandpa mug that says I'm like a dad, but cooler. And we know the coffee cups don't lie. So we'll get back to camp prep, and thank you for having me on, Grace, and keep up the great work.
Amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, that's going to do it for us on this episode of 247 Sports Live. On your way out, please like this video, subscribe to the 247 Sports YouTube channel. I'm Grace Remington. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.